Hi, I'm Matt Little. I'm the Director of Counseling and Education at Empowering Awareness.Asia, and I'm a proud sponsor of this podcast.
So
Hi, Greg. How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you very much, firstly, for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So I have gone through your profile. I can see you're doing amazing work. I have also seen the previous work that you have done. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience and share your experiences and also the present role that you're doing.
Okay.
So can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Brian Gorman, and I am a cloud architect in the Azure space, as well as a technical trainer, Microsoft certified trainer for over the last 5 years, and I've been an MVP for 4 of those years in the Azure space. For now, it's specifically for infrastructure as code and cloud native. So I do a lot of content development around that, as well as training around that, training for Azure certifications for the AZ 104, 204, 305, 400, 900, and a couple others. And train for Microsoft Academy for some, it's a code camp for veterans, and also just do some other things on the side as well. So um, that's my professional stuff. I've been a developer for forever, over 20 years now, since .NET first came out. I was in VB6 before that. Um, got a computer science degree from Iowa State University, and I think, oh yeah, I'm also a Microsoft Learn expert, so I help people on the Microsoft Learn space. Like, if you have questions about any of the Learn materials, you can ask me on specifically around DevOps and Azure fundamentals and things like that. So that's me.
So you are from?
I am in the middle of the United States in a state called Iowa. So, yeah, Iowa is in the middle of nowhere. There's no water anywhere to be found.
So you are into multiple roles. You're an architect and also doing training and also content training. So how you are able to manage and where this actually started, being as a developer for 20 years?
Yeah, yeah. So I started developing applications. I did a computer science degree at Iowa State in the early beginning of the 2000s and graduated in 2002. So during that time, I learned a lot about programming and just uh, started going out into the real world. About 2009, I actually went out and I ended up having 5 different universities I was doing computer science courses for, and then I homed that down into one, which was the Franklin University out of Columbus, Ohio. And so I taught with them for 10, 12 years, something like that. And then I took a break, and I'm actually helping out again for a couple semesters here on that. So I really love training and sharing knowledge and helping mentor people. And so I ended up building course videos that are on YouTube, not YouTube, sorry, Udemy, and I have my own course site where I sell my courses as well. So, because I just really want to help people learn how to program and how to do it well. And then also, especially now with the cloud stuff, like transitioning your like workloads from on-prem into the cloud, things like that. So, a a lot of different things. So how do I manage all that? Well, basically I just, kind of just keep working, honestly. Just got to keep going. So, the thing is that when you love something, when you enjoy something, it doesn't really feel like work. So you can keep doing it, you just do it because it's so much fun to create content that helps people learn. And then it's just like, yeah, it's great. So,
Awesome. So tell me you as the cloud architect.
yeah. So, I do help a lot of people, making migrations into the cloud from on-prem or implementing solutions that, need to be secure or basically just, helping to modernize applications. And so I do a lot of like consulting work around that. So helping people to design their networks and build out where they're going to deploy their applications, as well as helping build the pipelines and the infrastructure as code, GitHub Actions, either using Bicep or Terraform to get that stuff out there. So all of that is part of that whole job. But it's mostly like someone would come to you and say, hey, I have this legacy .NET application and I need to get it out into the cloud. How do I do that? And now we're seeing a shift now where we're even starting to look at like containerization of .NET apps, which is something that we wouldn't have thought of 10 years ago. Be like, no, why would we even do that? And now we're starting to see that being a big thing. It's like, oh, this is actually a thing we can do now. So
what kind of applications that you work for? I mean, what scale?
I'm sorry?
Is it small or medium or large?
Uh-oh.
What is the size of the applications that you work for?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, most of them are fairly small. It's kind of a pilot projects that I get involved with a lot, and I help people set up, their pilot project, and then once they see kind of that, like how that goes, then they take that and run with it. So, and I've had the opportunity to do that through a different company that I actually subcontract from. So it's been really fun to be able to be a part of that. But yeah, so then they have a lot of these projects come to you, and they it's like a first attempt to get something into the cloud. So they take the pilot project or part of their major system, and then we figure out how to get that kind of and to standardize the process around that. Like, okay, this is what it's like to use infrastructure as code. This is what it's like to make sure that your workload is secure in the cloud, and that you have a lot of secure communication between your on-premises and your cloud if you're doing a hybrid thing, which a lot of them are for the first workload. So it's pretty fun.
So you have seen technology before advancement and after advancement, especially cloud technology. So what is before and after cloud?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, because basically a lot of us in the .NET space and the Azure space, we've been doing IIS or VMs or hybrid, some sort of not hybrid, some sort of Hyper-V, implementation where you had this .NET framework application, and it had, it ran on a VM, and you had to have all the infrastructure set up for that, and then you would basically be doing manual deployments and kind of having, your team that has maybe either you have some baked in tool that you're using to help make sure that you copy all the files all over the place or whatever you need to do. So this kind of back in the day, right, where we had to do all that and make sure your database migrations are run, if that was scripts or migrations, whatever it was. And so now companies are saying, well, yeah, that was great 10 years ago, but we've got the cloud now. So how do we lift and shift this application from an on-prem into the cloud? And so you basically talk about, okay, well, first of all, we need to, figure out where are we going to host it in the cloud? Are we going to just do another VM in the cloud and kind of have the same thing in parity, or are we going to move right to an app service? So there's a migration pattern Microsoft likes to follow. It's called the Cloud Adoption Framework. And so typically that combined with another one called the Well-Architected Framework. What you do is your Well-Architected Framework is one application to get it well architected in the cloud, and your Cloud Adoption Framework is how do we as an organization take what we know already and move that into the cloud. So a lot of companies will do a first thing where they do a lift and shift, and basically just if we have VMs on-prem, we just create VMs in the cloud and kind of do the same thing so we know it's going to work, and then migrate or modernize the application into either containers or an app service that's just deploying, an upgraded like .NET 8 now, or it'll be 9, 10, 9's coming out, 10 will be out next year, so it's moving fast. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works. It's just how do we get our application up to date? How do we get it out? First of all, what do we get it into the cloud? How are we going to do that? And once we get it into the cloud, how do we modernize it? Then we talk about, while you're doing that, making your architecture be infrastructure as code, so that you don't have to worry about essentially, somebody pushing the wrong button or having some misconfigurations. And then there's other considerations around like governance. How do you make sure that the right things are getting deployed and who isn't? Somebody's not deploying the most expensive Azure resources that are out there. So you put some policies in place to make sure that doesn't happen. So yeah, so that's kind of how that works.
So as a developer, as an architect, as an owner of the business, as a consultant, how much time you take in order to understand the on-prem architecture and migrate it to the cloud
Sure.
for any business that you work with?
Yeah. So a lot of the times I'm actually doing it through, I'm subcontracting from another company as well that's helping. So a lot of times I'll work with them to do that, and they will have people in their company that also help to do that. But a typical project could take anywhere from 3 months to 2 years. It really depends on how much you want to do, right? If we just want to implement the bare bones of what you have now on-prem in the cloud, we can probably do a first iteration in a few months. But if you want to go the full gamut of, hey, we're going to lift, shift, then we're going to modernize, we're going to do all this other stuff, it can take anywhere from 9 months to a couple years to do that kind of work on top of just the planning of the thing. So the planning, you can get the planning done in not that much time, but then it's the implementation where you start writing the infrastructure as code, where you start actually making sure things are work, do all your testing around all of that, and then get the app out there, start getting traffic directed to the app, making sure it's still working, and then start the modernization process. So it can take a while, but it's usually, if you plan it well, it's pretty risk free for the most part, and you start seeing benefits of going to the cloud pretty soon when you do that.
Change is constant in business. A lot of things changes constantly. So when a lot of things changes, how you are able to do that changes when it comes to technical things, with the business owners that you work with.
Sure. So yeah, a lot of times you already kind of know up front like what the life cycle of something is, and sometimes you don't. So like an Azure App Service is going to be around for a while. It's not going anywhere, right? So if we go to an Azure App Service, we're probably going to be safe. It may have some small changes here and there. Things get retired, but Microsoft does a really good job of sending you notifications, like, hey, in August of 2025, this thing is going to be retired, right? So let's make sure that you should start your migration plan now. So then you can, make sure that that's happening. As far as like upskilling and keeping things in date, you really can't stop learning. It'll move too fast if you do. So you just really have to kind of look for, a few people to follow that do a lot of really good things, like what your YouTube channel, a couple of other people, we do a podcast as well, just talking about stuff we do. A friend of mine and I, Alec and I do that podcast, and then, constantly reading, constantly doing Microsoft Learn modules, finding blog posts and things that are relevant. But the other thing I really like to do, I speak at a lot of conferences, and so I interact with people at conferences, and that's when I find the most interesting stuff, because the hallway conversations at conferences plus the talks other people are doing, that's typically where you find out, oh, there's this really new cool thing that you should probably get on your radar, right? And so you hear about it and you're like, oh yeah, I need to use that. That's really great. That solves my problem. Or you're having a problem and you talk to someone else at the conference and they're like, oh yeah, we solved that. Use this. And so, those are really great things to do too.
So as a cloud architect, I'm sure you might have explored all services. Maximum services in Azure. So what do you say about it and how it is contributing to the technology industry and to different businesses which belongs to different industries?
So I think what you're asking is like correct me if I'm wrong on this. You're asking me like within Azure, how many different Azure services there are that like could respond to different types of businesses. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, yeah, businesses which belongs to different industries.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so one of the really great things about Azure, and I'm sure other cloud providers do this as well, but I only know Azure really well, is that there are lots of standards and lots of you can go to the Microsoft Trust Center and you can read about, so let's say you're a healthcare company. You have in the United States you have the HIPAA requirements where you have to protect personal information around health. And so you can actually look for how can I make sure my Azure subscription is compliant with HIPAA or different security things as well. The criminal justice system, so basically they have all these different standards that you can go out there and you can say, I want the governance for this on my subscription. And then Microsoft's tools within Azure will actually alert you if you're not in compliance and help you to remediate things when you can't. So the really cool thing is, though, from any kind of perspective, you can deploy just about anything. You can do things like batch jobs. So if you're just processing files and, like maybe you're taking in PDFs all day long and just collecting signatures. Now with AI tools, you can literally just have the vision read your PDF and translate it into your whatever you need to do with that in your database, right? So a simple thing like batch jobs with AI can do that. Or you could be a fully blown SaaS provider with millions of customers where you have, all kinds of different things to manage, like resiliency and global availability and all that stuff. And so like if you're, trying to compete with Amazon for some reason as an e-commerce provider, you could do that. If you're an insurance company or a fire company or, something that like you want to, you just need to have your business apps out there for your internal people or for clients to log in and see their policies or whatever it might be, right? You can do all that. So, there really isn't any limitation. And then the cool thing is like, if you want to use containers, great. If you don't want to use containers, also great. So you have other options. And then, with Azure Functions, you can do little one-off things or, more than that. And then, there's also low-code options too. If you don't even like coding, make some automation flows with Logic Apps, and got all kinds of options. And you take about 5 minutes, and you can spin up an API endpoint that allows you to integrate with SendGrid and send emails. So you just post your subject in your who, and you've got a Logic app that's sending an email through SendGrid or Twilio.
You are an expert in understanding the architecture of business softwares, and also talking with people. Both are two different. Uh, uh, and communicating with people is different from communicating with computers. So how do you
Right.
define this, and how you developed this in just 20 years? Like, what are those
Yeah.
experiences? What
Yeah.
made you to?
Lots of interesting conversations around that because, trying to figure out how to communicate what the system needs to do with the business isn't always easy, right? You have to tell them, or you have to be able to explain to people in a way that makes sense, like why, okay, for example, why do we need to spend an extra $300 on this service, right? Because if you don't do this on, when you run your sales after the holidays, you won't have the ability to scale quickly. And so therefore you'll start to see like your load will go down. And if you don't do this, then, maybe you'll be okay, but maybe you won't, right? You won't have some sort of automatic response. Or what's even more important, if it's $300, $500 a month to secure your workload, it might seem like expensive up front until you don't get breached and you don't have to pay a big fine, right? Or, you can offer your customers security. So you look for, what does the business need? What does the business need to understand about what they need? And then what does that look like when you're implementing the solution? Like, how do we provide the best security? How do we provide the best resiliency so that you're always available? Does that matter? Maybe we don't need to be available 24/7. Maybe we just need to be available from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, right? And then we don't want to spend all the money to have it up all weekend. So how do we make that work, right? So
So how do you speak with leaders or business owners who don't have technology,
mhm.
experience?
So most people who don't have technology experience but are leaders like that are very wise when it comes to what their business needs to do. So you look for what are they asking you for their business, and how do you relate that to them, as far as, we can provide that for you, right? So, a business owner might come to you and say, hey, I need to have the ability to process, millions of customer payments a month. Okay, great. They don't know how to do that in Azure or in any technology. And we say, okay, well, what's your average, what do you have peak workloads, things like that. So you ask, like, yeah, sure. Tuesdays, for some reason, we're getting, 1 million customer payments on Tuesdays or something. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, right? So you figure out like how to relate what their business acumen is to what you need to develop. And then you explain to them, okay, here are your options. So, you can go with a lower cost option here, but you may see some blowback on that. Or you can go with the higher cost, and you may actually be overspending a little bit, but then you're guaranteed never to have to worry about that. And then there's always a middle ground of we've got, the ability to auto respond to things. So whether there's a manual approval step in that, they understand that part very well, especially like for failovers. They understand that, like, if you want to be hands off completely, we can make it so that if something goes down, it's going to automatically fail over and handle that. Or if they're like, well, I don't want to spend the money on that, but I need it in case it happens. And then, maybe we just want to push a button if we need to do it. Or to run some tests around it, we push a button. We don't automatically just do that stuff. So we're not going to necessarily be live in multiple regions, but we have the ability to switch over. So you find those compromises, and they don't need to understand why you have to have buttons to push or what you do to get between regions, but they do need to understand, and they will understand, the high level of my customers can't get to the website, right? And if there's a hurricane or an earthquake or some disaster that causes power to go out in a region, we're all out of luck unless we have a failover region, right? And everybody can visualize that kind of thing. So you take what the technology offers for you, and you relate it to them in a way that it computes to what they're trying to accomplish with their business.
And how much you understood about Microsoft products and services?
How much have I tested, or?
How much you have understood it? How Microsoft products and services are, helping humanity in,
Oh,
making things happen? And also, how do you think that Microsoft is thinking, actually? You saw long
sure.
time technology change.
Yeah. So it has been an interesting paradigm shift in the last 10 years or so, with when the change of leadership happened about 10 years ago, from being a kind of a closed company to more of an open company, to bringing in like global developers that aren't just Microsoft people. They bought GitHub, which was a really good move, and opened up that ecosystem. They made all of the like C# and all the stuff open source so the community could help to make that go. So they've done a really good job of being like, okay, we're not such a closed system anymore. We're a more open system that lets other people in, and even like they went from, some really steep pay models that were barriers of entry to like, okay, here's our free level of services to get like, community service, like Visual Studio Code, for example, completely free, or, Visual Studio Community, if you're not doing, professional work with it, also free. So you can learn, you can do the things you want to do for free with these tools, and then you can get better at it. But that's kind of like how they helped with developers. You asked an interesting question about what is Microsoft doing for the world. And I know that Microsoft is pledging to be carbon neutral, or carbon positive, meaning, even with all of the ecosystem of, they're putting up data centers all over the place and they're using power and all the stuff, they're still pledging to recoup that so that the world, like the climate issues that are happening and things, are maybe not as affected. So, but then the third part of that, with the tools that Microsoft has developed for AI and the partnerships they've formed with other people to make those AI tools that they've been announcing the last few years, it seems like we're going to, as a species, have an opportunity to have a shift where it's like when I like what I like to say about AI is that when engineers had slide rules, they were able to do calculations with the slide rules, but it was much slower than once someone introduced a calculator. And now you can just push a few buttons and get the accurate results you were getting that took maybe an hour or two in minutes. And I think what we're seeing is with this new AI stuff, it's almost like that's happening again. So we're going to be able to be 3 or 4 or 5 times more productive and be able to produce better things that are more user friendly. And I think it's a really good thing. I think it will help us to advance as a species. So to kind of wrap all that together, I think Microsoft has done a great job of positioning themselves to help out that. And I think the other companies like Google and Amazon are doing that too, but I don't know as much about them. I do know what I've seen on the Microsoft side.
So what do you think that is making Microsoft reach everywhere on this planet with the cloud services?
What do I think that's helping them do better for the planet with their cloud services?
What made them to reach everywhere on the planet with the cloud services?
So I think, I don't know. I don't know the minds of the executives at Microsoft. I wish I had minds like theirs. But I think, it's a mission to make the world better in a way that like everyone could have access to the tools and the things they need to learn, the things they need to provide for their families, and the things that they need to be able to do things like maybe you need to be a doctor in a remote village in Africa, and you need to be able to quickly look up how to cure something, right? You need to have that technology at your fingertips to be able to do that. Or, maybe you're, I don't know, maybe you're just, you don't realize the impact you're having. Maybe you're just making a website, but that website is actually helping, thousands of people find out like what their joy is in the world or something, right? And so, it's like the economy of scale they talk about with saving money with the cloud, but the economy of scale of like, you're allowing other developers and other people to develop things to make the world better. So now why wouldn't you want that to reach the whole world, right?
Great. So the main thing is when it comes to the migration from on-prem to the cloud, as an architect, what thoughts that that leaders come with, and what are the requirements that they come with? Mainly the cost reduction
Mm-hmm.
that I'm sure they'll come with. Like how you will be helping them in order to make them happy.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously there are a couple metrics that determine whether or not things are successful. Usually, it does involve a budget and a constraint around that budget, and then also it may be a delivery time. So, how fast can we get this up and running in the cloud? But it always, not always, but most of the time, when you have a problem that you're looking to solve, you maybe already have built an application to do that, or you haven't. It just depends. But you take whatever they are bringing to the table, and you say, okay, you already have this application. Let's get it working in the cloud so that now you don't have to be located in just one building in New York City or something. And in case something loses power, you're done, right? You say, okay, let's get this in the cloud, and then if something happens on the East US or Central Europe or wherever you're housing your stuff, it'll still be available. So now you're in a better spot there. And then if you really want to crunch numbers, you can always try to figure out, well, what does it cost your company if you are down for an hour, right? So let's say you're down for, I don't know. Let's say it costs you $50,000 if you're down for an hour. That's a lot of money to lose, right? But if you pay $6,000 more a month, you can guarantee that doesn't happen or something. I'm making numbers up, right? But the point is, you weigh the cost and the gains, and you say, well, where's the happy compromise? But you take the requirements that they give you, say, well, they want to use their app that they've already built. Great, let's get it in the cloud. They want to step one, just get something so that's like a co-location where you have they're still on their prem and they still have a cloud as a failover, right? So that's not going to cost as much usually because you're not as invested in the cloud at that point. So it's a good entry level thing. So if they're nervous about the cloud or they don't know how it would help them, you don't go full bore. Let's just move to the cloud. I promise it'll help you, right? No, let's weigh it out. Let's figure out what makes sense for your company, and if you don't trust the cloud, then that's okay. But what if we baby steps into the cloud? Like, okay, let's take 10% of your traffic and direct it to a cloud instance and see what happens. Does that make your stuff faster because now your workload on prem is lowered by that 10%? All of a sudden you say, oh, this is kind of cool. My website is now responding much better than it used to. And so you find things like that to figure out what makes sense for the business owner and figure out what it looks like for their budget around all of that. And if they don't want to spend so much money, then what's the compromise? What are we going to, it's just like anything. Time and money are the features, if we don't have enough time, we can't get it in. If we don't have enough money, we can't get it in. So you make the calls. What's the most important pieces?
You are a multi-skilled person. You are an architect and also, doing training and also creating content. So how that architect in you is actually making you be good in training and also be good in creating content?
Yeah. So I actually, my biggest passion is actually around creating content. And so, but the thing about it is, you can only do so much academically. And like if you want to get really, in my personal opinion, if you want to make really good content, you need to understand like how it actually works under load. So like it's really easy. Like I love Microsoft Learn with all of the stuff they've given us to go there and be able to read through the documentation. But 90% of the time, the recipe or the prescription given on the Microsoft Learn page is enough to get your feet wet, but not enough to actually take a real world scenario and plug and play with what's out there. So if you want to be, better at creating that kind of content, I think it really helps to actually be doing the thing and seeing some of the pain of like, oh, it's not as easy as we thought to deploy this thing into the cloud. There's a real cost pain with, maybe it takes, 45 minutes to spin up a gateway, right? You don't really think about that, when you're training for the AZ-104 and you're saying, well, let's talk about, what does a gateway do? Well, we can make an on-prem connection between the gateway. That's awesome. Sweet. Let's go do it. Okay. Push go and then let's go to lunch, right? Because we got to wait for it to spin up. And that's a kind of a really contrived example, but when you really have to go in and fight the fires and see the things that happen when it is in the real world scenario, I think that helps you not only to understand the technology better so you can train it better, but it gives you stories to help like the people who are being trained to understand why this is more important. And then like there's this really fine line of too academic and too hard. Like, so when you go to train, you can't just be like, okay, you've never seen Kubernetes before, let's go deploy a cluster today and spin up, and go write the YAML file and do all the things you need to do. And they'll be like, I don't even know what Docker is, right? How am I supposed to, what am I doing? Right? So you have to find that line of, okay, well, what training do you need? And then, how do we relate that to the real world and ramp you up through all that and skill your team up so that you can end up being cloud ready and being productive, with more than just, well, it's just, just run a Docker command to build it and push it to the container registry and you'll be fine, right? No, it's a little more involved than that. And how do we automate that? And how do we do that? So, for me, like, creating the content gives me that solid, I have something to train with, and I have something to remember how I did it the next time I come back to the same problem. So that's part of the reason I like it so much. So
most of your life, you worked on developing applications. Now you are helping businesses and business owners who are actually developing their businesses. And you're working and you're helping in migration and understanding the architecture of the software of their businesses. So that development and this development, like business development, that you're trying to understand and trying to do architecture for that, and but actually you started as a developer working on the application.
yeah.
So how different it is, and how you are able to have
hmm
this two different kinds of mindsets in you.
Yeah, that's another great question, because I think like there are people who are really good managers, and there are people who are really good developers, and there are people who are really good business owners or product owners, right? And so there are various reasons to have people that are certainly just that one role, right? But there's also, like, I've worked for a lot of small companies early on, and then throughout the years, like, I've worked for big companies and small companies, but when you're in a small company, you have to have, like, jack of all trades. Like, you have to understand. So you end up, managing the servers and writing the code and deploying the code, when you're in a small shop. And so I was fortunate that in some of my early stages, I had to do all of that, which gave me interest in all of it, but also helped me to say, okay, this whole thing works together, which I think now it's almost like almost every developer is going to have to get there because of DevOps and the way that the ecosystem has changed. Now I think companies are asking developers to do more than just write code. So the question is, like, if you wanted to go that route, what do you do? Or how, first of all, if you're not interested in networking, then I don't want to force you to do that, right? But if you're going to be a DevOps engineer, or their company's asking you to do a DevOps engineer, you probably need to know enough to be dangerous. So if you could just, get good at building a VNet and putting your application in it, that's probably good enough. And maybe you need a little help with the security or something from someone else. You don't have to know it all. For me, it has been beneficial to me to learn all of the stuff that I do better because of being a trainer. So, like, if you're not doing the training, it's a lot easier to not have to be so broad. And there's a trade-off. By being so broad on things, I'm also not as deep as some people, right? So I'm more of the, a lot of people call it like T-shaped, right? Where you're kind of widened out, and then maybe you have one thing that goes down. That's kind of where I live. I have a couple of deeper things, but they certainly, like, a network engineer would be way deeper with networking than I'm ever going to be. So, like I said, get good enough to be dangerous with it and be able to communicate around it, and then seek help when you don't. I mean, you just have to ask for help. I just asked a friend for some help with some security questions I had because I don't have time to be as deep as they are. So build your network so you can network with people, and then understand like who knows something better than you, so you can say if there is a problem, what do we do? Who do I look to? Who can I go to for some help or some guidance on this? Or at some point it might just be like, hey, my team needs training on Kubernetes, or I keep saying Kubernetes, but Azure Container Apps, or app services, or just general cloud app development, right? So you find out somebody that can help you with that.
So, what are the challenges that you experienced and you explain to leaders in cloud technology?
So there are a couple of challenges, and a lot of them stem from somebody heard about a technology and they want to use it, but they don't really need it. So they heard, well, there's this new thing, it's in the cloud, I want to do it. Okay, well, why? Well, because they said it was going to be like a life-saving or whatever. Awesome, cool. Let's look and see if that's actually going to do what you think it's going to do for you. But the challenge is, okay, so let's say traditional .NET developers. I just was having a conversation with my friend who owns a company that they're a .NET shop, and the question is, should we learn containers? So here's the thing: if you want to do Kubernetes, which I usually don't recommend, but there are scenarios where it might be good. Kubernetes is a huge learning curve in itself, but if you don't know containers, you should not even be looking at Kubernetes yet, right? You got to learn containers first, and for a traditional .NET shop, that all of their stuff is not like a Kubernetes workload necessity. There's no need for them to learn containers right now. Now, would it help them? Sure, maybe, and it probably would be a migration strategy, but let's not go all in and say, somebody said we should use Kubernetes, let's go do it, right? No. Let's sit down and let's learn containers first and see if that's actually something we want to have our whole team learn, because we don't have anybody who's skilled in it. So now we've got a learning initiative around containers before we even think about migrating that, because otherwise it's you're getting the cart ahead of the horse, right? You're ending up like, okay, we're trying to do this really hard thing called Kubernetes, but we don't even have anybody who can support the containers, and that's a recipe for stress and disaster for everybody. And so one of the biggest challenges is just like taming the expectations around what that looks like. And then the other one is there are so many possibilities with the cloud now that you may not know, and it can be almost overwhelming. Like how do we do this right? So as a team, you might be looking at, well, I can deploy to an app service, or I can deploy to Azure Container Apps, or I can deploy to Kubernetes. What should I do, right? And so one of the biggest challenges is choosing the right service, right? Just knowing this is going to do the thing we need it to do. It's not going to break the budget, and it's going to be the right choice for our team.
So you're being very powerful with understanding the cloud technology services, and also understanding the business requirements, and trying to match both. And how do you actually? I mean, what are those qualities that made you to, or qualities, or what is that way of thinking that made you to be smart in both, in business side, understanding the business side of the technology, and also understanding the actually, inside the technology, what are working?
Sure. Probably just trying to start my own company so many times. Like I've got to, so I go to like business conferences and just, heard what the business people were saying. I don't know. Because it's very easy as a developer to just kind of sit in your closet and just develop and do the things you need to do. But again, part of that, I've been very fortunate to work for smaller companies where I had to interact with business people during the day and figure out what they needed, not just from a technology standpoint, but what problem they're actually trying to solve. So And then I did actually, I've done a couple of different trainings that I bought for myself on how to do the business side of a SaaS, for example, to not just be like the developer, but actually delegate the development to someone else, which is a really scary thing when you're like, okay, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to do this because I can develop it. I know it's going to work, right? I don't know if I trust them to do that. But if you're really going to do the business side of it, you kind of have to be out there trying to meet people and understand how that works. Like, and you can't spend your time just developing and then hope once you get this thing developed, it's suddenly going to take off with millions of users if you haven't been out there actually finding out what the users need and doing the things that business people would ordinarily do. So you see that side of things. And again, that's just probably fortunate for me because I've had the opportunity and the availability to be able to take a few risks here and there where I could try things and see what happens. So I don't know if you were like, okay, well, I want to get good at business and I'm just a developer right now, then I would say if you're working for a company, ask if you can sit with the product owner and see what their day is like. Listen to the conversations they have with the customers. See how they interact and see how they ask them questions, because I'm certain as a developer you know how to ask questions like of your product owner of like, well, what's the customer trying to do? Do I need a form for them to enter this, or are they just clicking buttons, or what are we trying to do? Like, how to take what they're saying and kind of make that happen in the computer, but take the next step and say, well, what if I had to go to the customer and find out really what the meat of their problem is, or take a class in UX design or something that's interesting to you and be able to like translate that into like learning about the business too, and then make an app that does the thing. I don't know.
In your early days, you have seen, technology, and now you're understanding the technology, after cloud, and
Mm-hmm.
what is going to be future with AI and
Wow.
cloud?
Oh man. I wish I knew the answer to that because I would get my money out and invest in whatever that is, right? I have seen some stuff lately. We interviewed a guy on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he's building some AI tools, and the things that I think are coming with this are going to make our lives completely different. Like it's hard to say that, but it's like when you went from having a terminal in the 1970s or early 80s, where you had to kind of move things around with the keyboard and you typed in little characters and that was it, to having a Windows computer with a mouse and being able to like interact, and then you went to touchscreen, and every iteration of this we've made these jumps. I think this one is going to take, when we reach maturity, and this might be 5 years or 15 years, I don't know how long this is going to take, but when we get to maturity on this, I think we're going to see humans with less stress, for one thing, because you're going to be able to do the things that sometimes stress us out now because of deadlines and things without having to do them. Meaning, you're going to be the monitor of the thing. Kind of like if you're thinking like a factory production line, and let's say you were automating. So let's say that you were putting together vehicles on a factory line, and you were the person who had to actually take the wrench, put it on the nut, and pull the trigger so that the nut screwed in and the tire is now attached to the vehicle. Right? Now we've got a robot that does that. And it's way faster. We do more cars, but somebody's still got to make sure that robot's doing what it's supposed to do, right? And so, like, we're going to still need to know what it looks like to have a good user design on a website. Because AI, we've seen the images it's making, right? They're not quite there yet. They will be there, though. And at that point, it's going to be, okay, this is the one. That's the one. This is the one. Okay, Okay, and then the other thing is the prompt engineering, right? We're going to have to get better at telling the computer what we actually want. Whereas right now, you might speak into your phone or type into ChatGPT or whatever. Give me a website that lets me enter user data, right? And it's amazing how fast you can do a website now with AI tools compared to what it used to be. It's going to be to the point where you'll have to know how to describe what you need, and you'll be able to say that. I don't know, maybe even at some point it will be able to sort of predict where you're going and add to that, right? So I think it's going to revolutionize that. I certainly hope that we will end up advancing as a species much more quickly because of it. I don't want to be pessimistic about AI at all. I don't think it's going to take our jobs. I think it's going to make our jobs different, just like a calculator made the engineer's job different. They still had to know how to engineer the system and validate and trust, that the numbers they put in were double checked and triple checked, and the bridge isn't going to collapse when the cars drive over it, right? Somebody still has to do that final say in it, but it wouldn't be so much nicer than to sit down and be saying, I need a bridge that goes across this gap. The gap is, let's say 1,000 feet or something, and it has to be 40 feet high. What's the, you could just ask the computer to design it, and the CAD drawing is just happening for you, and all of the forces are shown on this thing, and you've got it. And then all your job is, as the engineer, is to just validate, yeah, AI did it right, and now you've built this bridge in CAD or whatever they use, that the actual people can go out and build this bridge in half the time that it would have taken you to design this thing as a human, right? But it's still, the human factor is still there. It's just now it's faster. We can do 5 bridges this week instead of 1, right? So
you are a people's person, and also you are an architect, and you started as a developer. I think you can able to give perfect answer for this. So what do you think that that making humans to be or get perfection in having a human AI interaction?
yeah. So how do I skill myself up to do that, or how do we get to the point where it's actually working well? Which one of those are you asking, or both?
Actually, what are making humans to be more perfect in making human and AI interaction,
Hmm.
the compatibility.
Sure.
How
So
how human language is converted and AI is making humans to make their reduce their
mhm.
effort.
So I think we've already seen some leaps and bounds on that with the iterations of like ChatGPT. The differences between 3 and 4, for example, the differences between 2 and 3. I didn't use 2, so I don't know, but I'm assuming they were pretty big. And then from 3 to 4, the language model behind the scenes is much more accurate now from all the training. So from that side of things, the training on the language models continues, right? And so 5 more years from now, the scale of data that the language models have taken in and learned from will make the AI understand the humans better, and also have, if we have people, saying, no, that's incorrect, this is what it should be, training that model to the point where it's like, okay, the margin of error goes from, let's say, 1% down to like 0.05% or something. So now we've got a much better model that is going to let us be able to trust the data better and also get to the answer more quickly. But again, the other side of the thing is the human side of the thing. You're going to have to understand, it can be very frustrating right now to ask AI a question and keep getting the wrong answer, or I am a large language model and I'm sorry, but I cannot answer that question right now, right? So that can be very frustrating because it's like, just tell me, the thing. But so from the human side of thing, like, I think that there's going to be some psychology, which is interesting, around how to interact with a computer. That, like, somebody's going to have to figure out the gap between the human psyche and the computer, like, lack of emotions and lack of intuition and lack of reasoning. So, like, what I might have a conversation with you on, I can tell a joke and expect you to understand it's a joke, right? I tell a joke to the computer, it might not know it's a joke. It might be like, what? Like, it wouldn't understand sarcasm at all. So understanding that as a human, there's going to be a specific way that I can talk to the computer to accomplish the goal more quickly. So you see this in, like, temperature settings on the AI, right? So you say, like, okay, I want to be understanding this thing, and then you give it, like, some context of, like, you are a professional boxer, and you are trying to explain the limitations of the size of the gloves the boxer has to wear, right? So you kind of try to tell, I'm just making stuff up, but you try to tell AI more context about what it's trying to respond to, so that its questions are narrowed into a smaller subset of where it can go, but yet still making it so that the AI is smart enough to answer the questions being asked by the human. So now we're talking like document intelligence and different things where you have your entire company frequently asked questions handled by AI, right? So yeah, lots of opportunities everywhere on that one.
So, do you think the cloud technology is going to be replaced by AI?
No. I think that AI is going to live in the cloud technology for a very long time. So we won't be able to separate one from the other. Like, the AI is going to be there. Now, I'm not smart enough, but I don't know how to predict, like, what does Azure services look like 5 years from now? I have no idea. But it will still, we will still be leveraging, at least in my opinion, like, for years to come, we will be leveraging cloud stuff to do some of the AI stuff. Like, somebody will be hosting it somewhere, but whether that's Microsoft or OpenAI or whoever, somebody's going to have servers out there somewhere hosting this stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
So, at last, what do you say, to the viewers and to the listeners? They can be the business owners, and they can be working in technology, or they are looking for technology help. So, what words that you tell to them about the work that you are doing, and if they want help of yours?
So, thanks for that, by the way. So for what I do, I am able to help you if you want to have, my main thing that I do as my own company as far as training is around the Microsoft partnership. There is some requirements around AZ 104 and AZ 305, which is the infrastructure administrator, and then the solutions architect expert exams. So I combine those into a training program. So if you're interested in being a Microsoft partner, you need a few people on your team that have those certs, and I can help those people get that. I also do 204 and 400. So that's the developer cert along with DevOps. So those 4 certifications are kind of my bread and butter for what I do as a individual. And I throw the AZ 900 in there, of course, because you got to have the fundamentals in order to do the more important things. And the fundamentals actually plays out in everything, believe it or not. So even though it's an optional exam, I always recommend people take it. If you're just an aspiring developer, I'm actually focusing in right now on a couple things I'm trying to develop to help people who have never really developed and want to get into development, as well as when I was in computer science, I struggled with computer science a lot. And so what I'm trying to do is bridge that gap a little bit with some content I'm working on that would help people that are struggling or feeling like they're in a boot camp and that the material is going past what they can understand. Like, what are some of these things around the algorithms? What are some of these things around the data structures? So I don't know. I'm hopefully going to have some courses out on that by the end of next year. I currently have a Git course. I currently have an MVC course. Those are really good. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in those on my website, training.MajorGuidanceSolutions.com. And other than that, like if you want to have conversations around like what does it look like to migrate to the cloud, or we can talk about like what does your company need, and then I can get you connected with, if it's not me that can provide it, the team that I work with, they do it all the time. So we can definitely get people to help make sure that you get the cloud deployments or whatever that you're trying to accomplish done in a timely manner.
I'll put your website link on the screen and also in the description of this video. People who finds our video anywhere in the internet and social media can able to see the work that you're doing and can take the help of yours and make their business well.
Okay. Did you want me to put that on now? Is that what you're saying? Or you're going to do that?
Okay. I will do that. Can you spell it? Can you spell it to my podcast listeners who are listening this on audio?
Sure. So the company, the easiest way to connect with me on that is it's MajorGuidanceSolutions.com. So the site though is training. So TRAINING training dot Major Guidance Solutions. So MajorGuidanceSolutions, MajorGuidanceSolutions.com. Sorry for the really long name there. I should get like a little short bit.ly link or something and say, just go to this one. Or you can look me up at BL Gorman on Twitter or X, whatever you call that now, and Brian L. Gorman on LinkedIn. So those are probably easier to find. But those are the main places.
So you can help any business which belongs to any country.
I think so.
Okay.
I've never done anything outside of I've done training. I have done training around the world virtually. So I've done training for India and Central Europe and Armenia and a couple of other places online. But all of my cloud solutions work has been in the United States. But that doesn't mean I couldn't consult with you and say, hey, what does this look like? It just may, where I would have a gap there would be that like I might not know cultural things, that's requirements for that, as well as any like if let's say you were in Eastern Europe or Central Asia or something, there may be some other standards that I'm not aware of just because I don't work in those areas. So other than that, like getting an application into the cloud looks the same whether it's in Central Asia or in Eastern Europe or in Western United States. Right? It's all cloud services at that point. So
at last, as a person who is smart in multiple fields, like in communicating with humans and also communicating with computers and also being great as a trainer and attending conferences, being a public speaker. So what's your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I have not. I'm sorry. So I needed to watch some, but this week has been absolutely nuts. So I have not seen that yet. But I will definitely take a look and let you know. But I appreciate you reaching out to me. I think that that's an awesome step. I don't know, you're probably well known from where you're from. And so that's really awesome. I'm probably very lucky to be on your podcast just as much as you were saying you felt fortunate to have me. So I feel like, that's really great. And I appreciate you taking your time to interview me. So thank you for that.
I have done Masters in Software Engineering, also Bachelors in Computer Science and Engineering. Right now I'm working as a Cloud DevOps Engineer for a London company remotely from India. So that's my full-time role. Apart from that, I'm interviewing experts like you who are already in the industry, who are been in industry from long time, who are solving different problems, different business problems, different engineering problems. And also I interviewed more than 850 people around the world, more than 100 country experts I have interviewed. I also interviewed the vice president of Amazon Web Services, Jeff Barr, and also a lot of cloud experts from Microsoft, a lot of cloud architects, also consultants, CEOs, like CFOs, founders of different businesses around the world, especially from US and UK. I try to explore them. I try to understand how they are solving problems, not just engineering related problems, how they are solving business problems.
Sure.
So this I'm doing this project as and also I interviewed in order to understand like what technology is used in NASA. So I wanted to interview people who are working in space technology.
That's
So
awesome.
uh, so this project I'm doing apart from my full-time role in order to understand experts from you and putting it on public and letting people know that these experts are exist, like they are doing awesome work and they are making things happen.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
as an observer, since you have not seen my work, as an observer with what I have said, how do you think this experience talking with experts around the world who are already experts in in different domains and me interacting with them, apart from being an engineer, how this, people skill is going to contribute to me and help me in my growth.
Yeah. So I think you're going to end up hearing really diverse things. So you won't be pigeonholed into a specific tech stack or a specific ideology around how you do things, which I think is going to make you much better, more valuable to a team, because you will be able to say, oh, I don't remember the name of the guy from Amazon, but I talked to the guy from Amazon who knows all the things, and they said, why don't you check this technology out? Because you wouldn't have heard of that otherwise, right? You might not have known of it. And so your team is like, we've got to get this thing out the door right now. It's all right here, and we know X. And you're saying, yeah, but Y might be better. Let's try Y, right? Oh, sweet. Okay, let's do it. And so I think that you're going to have that. I think obviously, you're going to be able to better understand how to get questions, get information from the people who you're interviewing, not just for this channel, but for the projects that you're doing, right? So you're going to be like, okay, I've asked this question and it just doesn't get the answer I want. So what's another way I can word this? Like, so you're going to get so much better at getting to the meat of the problem much faster than others with that. And just also the visibility that you're giving yourself overall, that's never going to be a bad thing, right? Because you're going to be visible and people are going to be like, oh, I've seen that guy on YouTube. Oh, I heard his conversation. Because at some point, like the people you interview are sharing this, right? And so their network is seeing who you are. And then maybe, I don't know what your journey looks like, but maybe your journey 2 years from now is you go out on your own and you start your own company and you say, okay, and then you say, okay, I've got this network. Hey, Brian, do you know anybody who needs work? Right? And I say, sure, yeah, I'll send them your way. And then they watch your video and they're like, oh, that's great. I would love to work with this guy, because they can see what you're doing before they actually have to invest in you. Right? So I think that's a really good thing.
It's an extremely valuable feedback and observation, and keep this in my mind. And I'll do the best. Upcoming interviews that if you have time, whenever you have, like, kindly watch it. I'm sure I'll make you proud.
Yeah, that sounds great. I will
Can
definitely.
can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And
So,
also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
of course. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Rain. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Rain, for your valuable time and sharing your experiences and telling about the work that you're doing and telling us how you help different businesses and telling how things will work. And also, you said about AI.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the conversation. It's always fun to talk about this stuff. And again, thank you for your time as well and for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.